What's going on, guys? It's Kyle again from Excel at ESL.com. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to discuss the number one technique that you can use for your IELTS reading test to maximize your band score. So this technique will allow you to read faster and select your answers more accurately while you are taking your IELTS reading test. This technique is called skimming and scanning. So what skimming and scanning is you look at the questions first. You don't spend time reading the passage. The first thing you do is read the questions. And while you're reading the questions, you select the key words and phrases and main topics of each question, and then use those to look back at the passage and rapidly find where in the passage each topic is spoken about so that you can pinpoint specific information in the passage. So during the IELTS reading test, you don't want to spend your time reading the entire passage. This isn't a good use of your time. You only have 1 hour to complete the IELTS reading test. So you want to make sure that you're using that time wisely. So you have 1 hour to read 3 different passages and answer 40 questions about each of them. So if you spend a minute and a half on each question, then you've hit your time limit. And an important thing to keep in mind is that unlike the IELTS listening test, you do not have time at the end to transfer your answers from your rough worksheet to the answer sheet. You have to do that during the hour for the IELTS reading test. So you want to make sure that you are answering the questions quickly and accurately so that you have time to transfer those questions to your answer sheet and also proofread them, because during the test, if you make a spelling mistake or if your grammar isn't accurate, you will lose valuable points on your test. So you want to make sure that you have enough time at the end of it to transfer your answers accurately. And you can do that by skimming and scanning. So let's take a little look at an example together to see what skimming and scanning looks like. Alright, so here's an example of a IELTS reading test question. This particular test question is for the table completion question type. So if you would like to follow along, or if you would like to attempt this question yourself, I'll include a link to where I found this question in the description. You can find it there. So, skimming and scanning. When you skim and scan, you want to have something to skim and scan for. So your first objective is to look at the question. In this particular question, it's a table question. So I haven't seen this particular question before. This is my first time working with it, and I'm going to demonstrate skimming and scanning to you now. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer the table question below for this IELTS practice reading test, and we'll time it to see how long it takes me to do this. So basically, I'll set a timer, 0 at the moment, and I will go through this question. So let's do this together. So I'm starting the timer now. So basically we're looking for a species, Spanish, preferred climate, start of active period, and number of generations per year. Alright, so let's go back up. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking for the word Spanish. So we see Spanish there. We see Spanish here. Okay, this seems to be our answer. So, from late winter until autumn. The latter, which multiplies in early spring to produce 2 to 5 generations. And state of Victoria. Temperate climate. All right. So those were our answers. So we'd put temperate climate, early spring, 2 to 5 generations. So now South African ball roller. We're looking for his preferred climate, the complementary species. So one thing to keep in mind for the IELTS questions is most often they'll be in order. So because we found our answer over here, that means our answer for the next question will probably be below that. So we can ignore everything up here. So South African ball rolling species. So it is subtropical, and it works with the South African tunneling species. Alright, so that's our answers. Subtropical, South African tunneling. And we're done. And that took me 2 minutes and 12 seconds while I was talking to all of you. So that's a very quick example of our skimming and scanning strategy. So what you want to do during this particular strategy is you want to start with the question first. So what I did here was I looked at the questions I needed to answer first. So for this particular example, we had 2 different species of dung beetle that we needed to find information for. So we had the Spanish species and we had the South African ball roller species. And we needed to find some different pieces of information for each of them. So for the Spanish species, we needed to find the preferred climate, and we needed to find the start of the active period, as well as the number of generations per year. So when we were doing this, we keep these in mind. We needed to find these 3 things for the Spanish: the preferred climate, the start of the active period, and the number of generations per year. So after you know your key ideas or the topic, you go back to the passage. Now, we said that our goal or the topic was the Spanish species. So our key word that we're going to be searching for in the passage is going to be Spanish. So if you start at the top, immediately you can see that there are no words that begin with a capital S. You can see that very quickly. No words begin with a capital S. So we can completely skip the first paragraph and go to the second paragraph. And you can see in the middle of the paragraph is the word Spanish. So right here is the word Spanish. And after we find that, we need to look for our information. So we need the preferred climate, the number of species, and I forget the last one, but that doesn't matter. So the number of generations and the preferred climate. It's not there. But if we look down under that, we see the word Spanish again, Spanish species. And when we start reading here, we immediately see that we have the needed information. So we have the preferred climate right here, and then we have when they're active, and then we have the number of generations that they produce. And then that very rapidly, that's the first part of the question done. And like I was mentioning earlier, after we have found the answer for the Spanish and we move on to the South African ball roller, very often in the IELTS reading test, the question information will appear in order in the passage. So we were over halfway done the passage, and we only read a very small piece of it. And the information that we need to answer this last part of the question is only in the small portion left of the passage. So we're looking for South African ball roller. So we go back up, and we see right here South African ball roller. And we were looking for its preferred climate and its complementary species. So it's a subtropical beetle, and it works with the South African tunneling species. So those are our answers. I haven't checked them yet, but I'm very confident that those are our answers. If we go below, we'll find the answers. But before we do that, I want to talk about the glossary. Usually, if there are technical words in the IELTS exam, you'll find a glossary for difficult words. We didn't come across these words during our skimming and scanning because I believe they appear in the first paragraph because they're introducing what a dung beetle is. So we find the word dung and cowpats in the first paragraph, but we completely skipped over that paragraph when we were doing our skimming and scanning because it didn't have the information we needed to answer the questions. But if you find technical information in the IELTS reading test, you will usually find it in a glossary explained. So let's check the answers. So down here are the answers. Alright, so temperate, early spring, 2 to 5, subtropical, and South African tunneling. So exactly what we found together. These were the correct answers, and we found them very rapidly within 2 minutes using the skimming and scanning strategy. So if you use the skimming and scanning strategy to answer your IELTS reading test questions, you can do them very rapidly. And when you are doing the test in person, you want to be able to do this strategy because it will cut down on the amount of reading you have to do significantly and make it so that your answers are better and more accurate than if you took the time to read the entire paragraph. Because reading the entire paragraph may make you confused, and you will definitely be reading a lot of information that you don't need. So, alright, so that was today's video. I hope you learned something today about skimming and scanning for your IELTS reading test, and I hope you enjoyed it. So this was Kyle from excel@esl.com. If you have any questions, you can reach me at kyle@excel@esl.com. If you would like to learn more about expanding your IELTS reading test skills and techniques, you can read a free article on my website dedicated to 5 easy tips on how you can improve your band score for the IELTS reading test. You can find a link to it in the description. So that's all for today's video, guys. See you next time.